All right, the time has come. We're going to use those financial calculators, and it all starts with this. First, we're going to talk about the future value of a dollar. The simple interest formula is principal times rate times time. Principal is the dollar amount you make in the investment. The rate is the stated rate that you're getting on investment, and then the time period is how often is interest earned on the investment. So we have $10,000 invested at 5% for 1 year, and it's compounded annually. How much interest is earned? So if we just plug in our numbers into the formula, we would take, let me just go back here, it would be 10,000 times the rate of 5%, and then the time it's compounded annually. So what that means is if it's compounded annually, it's only compounded once a year. So our formula would read 10,000 times 0.05 times 1, and that gives us an answer of $500. So that's basically the simple interest formula. Now, if let's say we're going to leave it in there for 3 years, well, at the start of the next year, we're now going to have $10,500, because that $500 is going to get wrapped back up into the investment, and then we're going to multiply it by 5% times 1, and now we have $525. And then in the final year, we get $551. So the ending amount comes out to $11,576. So basically, compounding interest is earning off interest previously earned. And so if we didn't have compounding interest, we'd only end up with this amount. So this $76.25 represents compounding interest. And you might be saying, oh, so what, Mr. Navickas, it's $76.25. Well, yeah, but if we really go out into time further, you'll see that compounding interest then has a snowball effect. It grows exponentially, so the slope gets greater as you go out further in time, because now you're earning more interest off of interest previously earned, and the dollar amounts will just get higher and higher and higher. And here we're just looking at just $10,000. Now imagine if we use this scenario and we're using $100,000 or $200,000 or $300,000. All right, so on our calculators, this is what we need to do. We're going to go to the time value of money solver. So if you pull it up, it's usually under you might have programs, TMV solver. It's the first one under finance. So you got to get to the financial functions of the calculator, and then you go to time value of money. So what we need to do for future value of dollar, we need to know what dollar amount we're investing today. We need to know the interest rate and how often the investment is compounded, and for how long, how many years. So in our calculator, we're going to type in N as the years that we're going to have the investment for, times how many times it compounds per year. So if something compounds once a year, and we have it for 5 years, it would be 5 times 1, and our N would be 5. If it compounds, let's say, semi-annually means twice a year. So the compounds would be 2, and if we did that for 5 years, 5 years compounded semi-annually, our N would be 5 times 2 would be 10. If it compounds quarterly is 4 times in a year, so if we had for 5 years times quarterly, it'd be 5 times 4 would be 20. Our interest rate is our interest rate, and when we put it in the calculator, we put it in as a whole number. So if it's a 5%, we just type in 5. We don't type in 0.05, just 5. The present value is what we're investing today. Annuity payment we'll get to in the next lesson. For right now, we're going to set that to 0, because we're not going to talk about annuities just yet. We got to master the future value of the dollar problem first. The future amount of the investment is what we're going to solve for. So on our calculator, we're going to solve that, and then the CY is the number of compounds per year. So if it compounds quarterly, then we put in 4. If it compounds semi-annually, we put in 2. If it's annual, we type in 1. All right, so here's a sample problem. If you have $20,000 today and put it into an investment that earns 5% and is compounded annually, how much will you have in 30 years? So since we have to solve for our N first, and our N is 30 years, it's compounded annually, so 30 times 1 is 30. So our N in our calculator, we're going to type in 30. The interest is 5%. The present value, we're investing $20,000 today. We're not making an annuity. The PMT is the annuity. We're not talking about that yet. So for right now, we're going to just set that to 0. We're solving for the future value, so we put a question mark here, and then the compounds per year is 1. So when we punch that into the calculator and then we want to solve for the future value, we solve and we're going to get some different things. But before we get to that, let's change the problem to quarterly. So on one side I have it annually, and this side I have it quarterly. So now we're compounding it 4 times a year. So let me just show you the difference in the variables. Now we do 30 times 4 to get an n of 120. That's our time frame. Our interest is 5. Our present value is 20. Now the only thing that changes down here is now we use compounds at 4 instead of 1. So when we solve it in our calculator, we're going to get the time value of money compounded annually. You're going to get an answer of $86,438.85 versus quarterly. You can see we're going to have almost $2,400 extra because it compounds more frequently. So as an investor, we really truly benefit from compounding interest the more frequently the investment gets compounded. All right, so obviously if you were to say, hey, how often do you want your investment compounded, you would say daily, Navicus, daily. So there really is nothing out there where it compounds daily. However, the credit cards, which we'll talk about, credit cards do get compounded every single day, and that's what makes it such a bad loan, and most people don't really get how they work, and we'll cover that with you. So there are the types of compounding. So they compound daily, monthly. So monthly would be 12, quarterly would be 4, semi-annually would be 2, and then annually would be 12. Alright, so I have some practice problems that I want you to do. So we will talk about the next lesson. We'll talk about the calculator real quick and how you manipulate it to get the problems done.